It is 1:02. Good afternoon from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Jackson Williams. SEC Media Days continue today with Mississippi State, Florida, Oklahoma, and Alabama set to speak. 3HL will be interviewing Blake Shapen, Isaac Smith, and SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey. You can catch that here on The Zone. In NFL news, the Jets made a pair of big-time moves yesterday, locking up wide receiver Garrett Wilson and cornerback Sauce Gardner to long-term deals. Wilson reached a 4-year, $130 million extension with the team, and Gardner agreed to a 4-year, $120 million deal, making him the highest-paid corner in the NFL. Nashville SC looks to bounce back tonight after a loss to Inter Miami as they take on Columbus at Geodis Park. Kickoff is set for 7:30 p.m., and you can hear Will Bowling and Eddie Carvaccio on the call starting at 7 right here on The Zone. For your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone, powered by All Four Seasons Garage Store. 615-737-1045 is the number. 3HL is over in Atlanta doing SEC Media Days, so I decided that today, for the first segment, to get a little SEC Media Days update, bring on their producer, executive producer, Joseph Bonanno. Now, here's my question. Did you pick out a nickname for yourself or like a new title since we talked yesterday? Because we got the Grand Poobah, Jackson Williams, behind the glass.
No, but I've been thinking about it for the last hour since you brought it up. It reminded me that I need to think about that. I think I want to be called King Producer.
King Producer.
Yeah, better than
Now,
Greg.
where does that, is that better than Big Boss Spurt?
No.
Okay, so we're one rank down.
He's still Big Boss.
Okay.
So it goes King Producer, Grand Poobah, Big Boss Bird.
Okay, so that's how we're going. So you're still third in the pecking order there, according to the title.
I mean, out of all the producers, I have been here the third longest. So
yeah,
I guess if you want to go by length of tenure,
yeah,
that'll work.
Now, you've been getting here at 6:30 in the morning to help with 3HL Media Days, make sure everything's set up nice for them.
Correct.
And all that. It's been great. The coverage by 3HL has been very good. Everything that you've been doing is very good. With all the interviews that you have done this week with 3HL as the producer, obviously you haven't been doing them, what has been the funniest moment of the entire week?
The funniest moment was probably yesterday with Josh Heupel. And so Slay and Heupel have this thing where Heupel loves the Boom Boom Room with Slay.
Yeah.
I think he's the first ever 3-time Boom Boom Room participant. And yesterday was number 3. And so the first question, Slay goes, well, Heupel, the transfer portal's real. And Heupel goes, yes, Slay, I know that now. And I mean, Slay lost it. It was hilarious. He did the same thing with NIL. And he goes, well, NIL's here. And then Heupel goes, yeah, Slay, I'm well aware.
Out of the non-University of Tennessee, because we'll talk a little bit more about University of Tennessee, what Josh Heupel has said about the quarterback situation. But when it comes to the non-volunteers, who do you think gave you the most information about what their season could look like?
I really liked what Auburn did yesterday, hearing from both Hugh Freeze and Jackson Arnold, because you've heard Hugh Freeze be in this hot seat conversation around the SEC, and Jackson Arnold, obviously a terrible, I don't want to say terrible, pretty bad last year with Oklahoma, being as highly rated as he was, and just hearing what convinced him to go to Auburn, his plan, Hugh Freeze's plan for him, how he fits into that system is really interesting. And, Hugh Freeze, you mentioned it yesterday on your show, went up to the podium and said Auburn's going to be in that college football playoff conversation. And it starts with Jackson Arnold. And so hearing the confidence that he has in Arnold, I don't want to compare it last year to Peyton Thorne because
that failed miserably.
It failed miserably, and he had Peyton Thorne a little bit longer. But Auburn clearly had a plan what they wanted to do this offseason. And because immediately once Jackson Arnold's name hit the portal, Auburn, first school that hit him up, every offensive coach hit him up, including Hugh Freeze. And I mean, it was a match made in heaven, is what they kind of made it seem like. So I'm going to be really interested to see what Hugh Freeze can do with a quarterback that actually fits his system. Because when he was at Liberty, he had that dual threat run on the throw on the run type of quarterback, and that's what Jackson Arnold is. Now Oklahoma did not really utilize him well in that situation. He didn't really fit well. They were injured on the offensive line at the wide receiver last year. So I'll be really interested to see what Hugh Freeze cooks up for Jackson Arnold this season.
Well, let's go back to the Tennessee Volunteers. Miles Kitzelman said that everybody's going to look up and be like, wow, I can't believe they're 7-0. I mean, obviously it's a little bit bravado because, I mean, you're probably not going to be 7-0, but has the way that SEC Media Days kind of changed your point of view about maybe a little bit of optimism about this season? Because I know a lot of turmoil at the quarterback position. I know it's settled, but I know that there's got to be a little bit of, nagging feeling in the back of your head, the BVS.
Miles Kitzelman, and if you didn't hear his interview, it's on YouTube at 104.5 The Zone. Get it wherever you get your podcast.
Look at this. He's like a professional.
I know,
over
right? I learned a little something sitting back there behind the glass. But he was asked about that. He was asked about that comment specifically, and the 7-0 thing. It wasn't about being 7-0. He wasn't saying that Tennessee is going to beat Georgia and Alabama and all first 7 teams. Like, that's not what that statement was. It was, do not write us off. Like, just because we don't have a star quarterback or we haven't named a quarterback yet. And that's where he put all of his confidence in, is the 3 guys that are competing for that. The most interesting thing that came from that interview, and it was closer to the end, was he had mentioned last year how there was not a vocal leader on the offense. So when things were going wrong, when they were getting 3 and outs, when overthrown balls, miscommunication between wide receiver, sacks, whatever, on the sideline, there was no vocal leader among the offensive players that was stepping up and saying, hey guys, like, we got to do something about this. And I was talking with Ramon about this morning, and Rhett Bryan, self-policing is so important on a football team. You can't leave everything up to the coach. And so when Miles Kitzelman told us that no one was speaking up, now it was in reference to after we asked him about the Nico situation, which he hinted on a little bit, but he's tired of talking about that. He wants to talk about these new quarterbacks, and that's where it led him, is that these 3 quarterbacks that are in this room, which is the transfer Joey Aguilar, Jake Merklinger, and George McIntyre, that these 3 guys, that is what's different about them compared to what was in the room last year, is that they are vocal. They are not afraid to rip into somebody. They are not afraid to, hey, guys, we need to go, or be a vocal leader. And, he admitted himself that, hey, last year I should have stepped up, but I didn't feel like I was in a place to tell some of these fifth-year seniors, to tell some of the guys that have been here a little bit longer what they need to be doing. So I just kind of stayed quiet, and he regretted that. He was very, very clear that he regretted that. This year, he's not going to do that. He's going to step up. He's going to be a vocal leader. If something's not going right for that offense, he wants to make sure that the offense is talking and taking accountability for themselves. And hearing kind of the behind the scenes of that, I'm really interested to see what this offense becomes, because now, in hindsight, looking back at it, you can tell that stuff wasn't happening.
I don't know if we were talking about this off air, Jackson, or we were on air when we were talking about the Netflix SEC documentary that was coming up, and I said it'd be really interesting to see how Nico is presented through that whole thing. I was like, because I want to hear the huddle, command of the huddle and all that kind of stuff, see what he is on the sidelines. And Jackson, you hear that from what Joseph said, relaying from what Miles Kitzelman said yesterday on 3HL, which, again, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast, you can go listen to it. How do you feel about that? And does that help your confidence in these quarterbacks as a Tennessee Volunteers fan heading into the 2025 season?
It does not matter until they play a game.
There you go. Short, succinct. I mean, the grand poobah, he knows how to handle it. He knows how to drop a mic, I feel like. That was a mic drop. It is interesting, though, because now I'm very even more interested in seeing that in the SEC documentary, among many other things across the SEC. But specifically, that's been one of the big kind of like bugaboos around Nico was this idea that maybe he isn't a vocal leader. I mean, we know that kind of like Marcus wasn't. We know that's kind of a thing, sort of. So I'm very interested to see if that self-policing, there is that big difference.
And that's not all on Nico last year. Like there are other leaders on that offense that needed to step up.
I was very surprised that none of the offensive linemen was one of those guys.
The offensive linemen, the running backs last year, some of the wide receivers, like it was very surprising that they kind of looked to Nico, and when nothing happened, it sounds like nobody wanted to step up.
Yeah.
And I mean,
what do you think that says about Josh Heupel as a coach? I mean, obviously, I think he's the third best coach in the SEC right now. But I mean, what does that say about his ability to either foster leadership or motivate leadership in a sense? And listen, it's hard if you don't have that leadership gene. It's really hard to step into that role.
I would want to wait to see what we hear about that this year with the team. Let's see after a big change like that, after a failure like that. I don't want to call last season a failure because they won 10 games, right? It's not a failure. They went to the college football playoff, the first ever 12-team college football playoff. It's not a failure.
Right.
But new quarterback, your quarterback left. There was some drama there. It's over. I want to see how they respond. That'll tell me what culture Josh Heupel's building. And from what it sounds like from Miles Kitselman, from some of the defensive guys, Arian Carter and Bryson Easton that we talked to yesterday, it sounds like Heupel is building the right culture. That nobody's bigger than the power T. Like that is going to be what I think what we need to pay attention to this upcoming season with Tennessee and see how they respond from all the stuff that's happened this offseason.
Maybe we need to be placing some college football best bets on University of Tennessee to make it to the college football playoffs. How about it? Let's go to the phones real quick. You want to take a phone call?
Sure. I've never done this.
This is Bo from Nashville who wants to talk about the Tennessee Volunteers. Bo, you're on with Zach and Joseph.
Hey, guys. How are you today?
Doing good. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you. Respectfully, I disagree with what he just said. A quarterback's demeanor and nature and whether or not they're a winner has everything to do with how they are off the field. And so those little tendencies that they have, the leadership tendencies, how they are in the gym, you can tell a lot of times if a quarterback's a good quarterback and a good leader of men by how they work out, how they run sprints, what their study habits are. It all depends on the person and the makeup and the inner, and that shows in the outer. So I think we had a horrible leader at quarterback last year. That's what it boils down to. It just wasn't that he wasn't a vocal leader. He wasn't a good leader. And when it came time at the end, he showed that. Even if it was his parents that made him do it, he didn't speak up to them. At his age, doing what he's doing, if he's a leader of men by that age, he should be able to tell his dad, I don't agree with you. I'm staying at Tennessee. If that was the case. I don't know if it was. If it wasn't, it was him. Either way, it's a loss. Guys that speak up and start leading outside of the field arena, when they get into the field arena, then they're the guys that'll grab your face mask and tell you to get your stuff together. That's simple.
There you go. I think he makes a lot of points, and I will just say this. I know that in where they come from in that culture, it's kind of hard to speak up. You're not really raised that way to speak up. But I will say, I do agree with his premise, but also not all leaders are built the same. That's the only thing I'll say. I do agree with him more so in the fact of you can kind of tell, like, you can tell when a leader hasn't and when they don't.
And in college, a lot of times leadership comes with age. The older guys are typically the guys you're looking at. Nico, his first year as a full-time starter, only a sophomore for the Vols last year. Should he have done more? I don't know. I wasn't in the room. I wasn't in the locker room. Like all I know is what little pieces have been shined from our talks with Miles Kitselman and Josh Heupel and other players in there. So we don't know what he was doing behind the scenes. But that specific instance of when things were going wrong, it seemed like the players themselves, there was no self-policing. That's what they're looking to change this year. All
right, we're up against the break. I mean, I know that we're way against the break, but Give me who all's going to be on today on 3HL.
Yeah, we're going to talk to all the Mississippi State guys. Blake Shapen, quarterback. We had him last year, so we'll hear about what he's going to be doing after he tore his ACL last year. So recovery from injury. We'll have Alyssa Lang. Greg Sankey's going to open the show, so make sure you get in early and get in there and hear from the commissioner, because we're going to ask him about all the expansion stuff, the super conference stuff, everything you want to hear about why the SEC is the greatest conference ever, and have him answer to that.
There you go. All right, that will do it for Joseph. Joseph, appreciate it. You, of course, 3HL, just like you promoted, has got a loaded lineup. When we come back, I'm going to tell you why you guys need to lay off Peter Skoronski, and we'll take more of your phone calls. 615-737-1045. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop, Zach Lyons here on 1045 The Zone.
Let's talk some insurance. My new client, King and Associates Insurance in Brentwood. They're independent agents, and that's a big difference, but it goes beyond just having multiple companies to shop. Weeding out the non-competitive companies, keeping great relationships with the biggest and best, along with bundling. But unfortunately, life happens, and they get it. Here's a true story about my friend and coworker that switched from a previous independent agent and got better coverage on his home and its content, even his automobiles, and flawless communication, and a true champion in his corner after his 16-year-old daughter's accident, and they still saved him thousands of dollars. And thousands from an independent agent who was overcharging him for years. And you can make the switch right now and save the same, if not more. But don't make the switch because he did or I did. Switch because you should. As a business, family, or individual, make the switch to King and Associates Insurance. And I'm sure you have good use for that extra dough you have in your pocket, by the way. And all you have to do is just give them a call. 615-329-8121. That's 329-8121, or online at tkinginsurance.com.
Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 105 The Zone, powered by All Four Seasons Garage Doors. 615-737-1045 is the number. And I guess I'll ask you first, Jackson, the grand poobah behind the glass, the man of the people, the voice of the fans. What are your feelings like regarding Peter Skoronski? Because I know that drafted 11th overall, has a certain set of expectations. But what are your feelings after 2 seasons of Peter Skoronski towards him?
I feel like he improved last season, and like that's what the offensive line needs for him to continue. I don't know if I have such strong feelings about a guard. I'm not going to lie.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you feel there's still a chance that he could live up to that 11th overall pick, or do you think that that's just kind of like a Corey Davis thing where he's just never going to live up to it no matter what he does?
I mean, living up to the 11th overall pick, I feel like is subjective because, I mean, if he gets a second contract here, it's probably worth the pick in the grand scheme of things because, like, the Titans have set themselves back with so many bad drafts that if you have Peter Skoronski on a second contract, he's a really like top 15, top 10 guard in the NFL. Yeah, it's probably not worth the 11th overall pick, where if you pick a guard 11th overall, you're expecting an all-pro level player, but it's still a really quality player on your offensive line that is a building block for you to be able to build an offensive line for your now young quarterback.
I would agree with that. I think people kind of look at a player getting drafted 11th overall. And for me, Peter Skoronski had a lot of narratives about him that people just couldn't let go. Because there were so many people that thought he could be a left tackle. And I was like, even in the pre-draft process, no. I know he played left tackle at Northwestern. And listen, he may have been a better left tackle than Andre Dillard and whoever else they put over there.
Or Jalen Duncan.
Or Jalen Duncan or something.
Who was the other guy?
But that's not going to fix your offensive line. It was Jalen Duncan, Andre Dillard. Did Dylan Radins play a little left tackle that year too?
Yeah, but he wasn't bad. He played against the Chargers and then tore his ACL that game. He was pretty solid at left tackle.
So I kind of look at it and I go, I don't think that Peter Skoronski being at tackle was going to change anything. And I don't think he was going to look that good either. Because he doesn't have the length and the power and all that kind of stuff that you need as a left tackle in the NFL. It wasn't just the length. It was many things. And so to me, it was just like he was always going to be a guard. And then I kind of think, just real quick, I kind of think that we forget that he was playing a totally new position last year.
How much do you think the appendicitis was overblown?
I feel like it was underblown.
That's what I mean. Like, I feel like he was going to struggle as a rookie, but he was put under the microscope because he wasn't playing well late in his rookie season, but he was playing a new position and had the appendicitis where he lost a lot of weight. So overblown probably wasn't the right word. But
I guess NPF played left tackle at some point in 2023. I totally forgot that. According to SIS, at least here. But yeah, I agree. So like, look at J.C. Latham, right? J.C. Latham played overweight, but it didn't really affect him until you get to that kind of midpoint or later point in the season. Whereas Peter Skoronski, he got that appendicitis early, lost about, I think, like 15 to 20 pounds that year.
Which is a lot for an offensive lineman to
Which
lose.
is a lot. You're 100% correct. That's not only a lot for an offensive lineman, but that's also a lot for an offensive lineman who wasn't necessarily the strongest or heaviest offensive lineman to begin with. And when you're kind of like that, that kind of derails everything. And then everybody wants to get rid of Peter Skoronski. And let's be honest, not many things went right last year, especially at the beginning of the season. But at the end of the season, Peter Skoronski was playing up to the level that you kind of maybe expected his first year. If you conveniently forget that he was playing an entirely new position.
Did they just flip his sides? Is that what it was?
No, he went from left tackle to left guard.
But, I mean, he played it his rookie season 23, so 24, it's not a new position.
No,
anymore.
not a new position last year. But what I was saying, a new position. What I was saying was probably how he ended the season last year is how people thought his 2023 season should have gone.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, then they believe that's how it should have gone. Because if you really start diving into it, Jackson, Peter Skoronski had a good year, and he's starting to get recognized for it. Not just here locally, but nationally, he's getting recognized for it. And you're talking about the ESPN list. He was right on the outside of the top 10 interior offensive linemen. Brandon Thorne, who we'll have on at 2:20 p.m., who works with the O-line masterminds, knows Duke Manyweather. His Substack is called Trench Warfare. He is the offensive line guy. He has him on his Substack, ranking him in the top 15 at number 8, talking about some of the improvements. I'll let him speak on that later, but he's talking about some of the improvements. So to me, Peter Skoronski may be approaching, he may never get to that 11th status, but he's definitely trending in the right direction to get
to be a good
second
player.
Contract.
Yeah, and be a good player for this Titans team. That's what we need from Peter Skoronski at this point. It doesn't matter where he was drafted.
Yeah.
The Titans need a good offensive lineman.
That goes to a larger conversation. Maybe we'll have this with Stoney on Friday, or maybe we'll even take it to football and other F words. But like, at what point do you just disregard where someone was drafted in their career? Because at some point, we also forget that Corey Davis, right, drafted 5th overall, but that was a crappy wide receiver draft. And the Tennessee Titans were a crappy offensive lineman. They were just terrible. They took the consensus best offensive lineman in that draft. And that offensive lineman, consensus-wide, for the most part, was considered a guard. And I understand, man, it sucks taking a guard. I get it. But if J.C. Latham, who was drafted as a left tackle, allegedly, then they're like, now they're trying to backtrack that and do revisionist history over at St. Thomas Sports Park. But if he plays really well at right tackle, similar to how Joe Alt, who was a left tackle, is playing right tackle and looks pretty dang good, then isn't that still worth it, even if he isn't a left tackle, as long as he's a really good right tackle? Like, all that to me is worth it for offensive linemen.
Yeah, and the team has, in my opinion, failed Peter Skoronski with his partners. This is third season in the NFL. He'll have a third partner next to him.
Yeah.
That's rare for offensive linemen across the league, and I think it's also early in the season. He may not look as good as he did at the end of 2024 because he's still gelling with Dan Moore. He's still trying to figure out steps and different ways that, Dan Moore probably does things differently than J.C. Latham did last season. And, that left guard, left tackle it's a partnership. And that partnership has to grow. And so I think that Peter Skoronski may not look his best at the beginning of 2025, but by the end of the season, I think he will probably be one of the best linemen on this Titans team.
I mean, when you look at, he had about 4 sacks last year. And that's down from 5, but what you saw is that he played more pass snaps. Okay, so while the sack total is less, the sack rate is way less. But we're talking about a guy from week 4 to week 18. Week 4 to week 18, 2 sacks, credited for 2 sacks. That's a long period of time to not allow a sack. And there were times, he had several games where he allowed 0 pressures whatsoever. And that's something to build upon, because now you're going to have him with Bill Callahan in year 2. And what we have seen from Bill Callahan over the course of his career, if you're a first rounder, you're probably going to be at your best under Bill Callahan. If you're a 4th or a 5th or whatever, probably not. There's only so much he can do for you. But a first rounder, he can do a lot. And I think with what you saw over the course of the year last year was Bill Callahan, Peter Skoronski being on the same page, despite what was going on with J.C. Latham hitting a wall, despite Lloyd Cushenberry going down with injury. And I do agree with you that there can be a slow start to every offensive line, but I will say Peter Skoronski and Dan Moore and all these guys are kind of training all together, so there should be less lag time, I guess, for them to gel.
It's still, I'm very big on, I think game reps are the most important thing. I think they should play a lot in the preseason.
Yeah. I would say maybe whole quarters in the preseason.
I would play them for the entire first half of every preseason game.
Yeah. Oh, man.
That's probably too much. You're not going to have Lloyd Cushenberry in the preseason, but I would throw the second string center, but I would have the other 4 linemen out there. Maybe you give Kevin Zeitler out after the first quarter, but the young guys and Dan Moore, Peter Skoronski and J.C. Latham and Dan Moore need to be out there a lot.
I will say this, just to throw some stats on Peter Skoronski, and we'll let Brandon Thorne talk more about what he has seen from a technique standpoint, because he put something over at trenchwarfare.substack.com about Peter Skoronski around the Detroit game, adding a new move to his repertoire. I don't think I even said that right.
Repertoire.
I can't say it. A new move to his arsenal. I don't even know why I even attempted it. I know I can't say that word.
Happy birthday, by the way.
Oh, no, we don't talk about that. It's fake news.
Everybody call in and wish Zach a happy birthday. 615-737-1045.
So after allowing, this is from Warren Sharp, after allowing a 6.6 pressure rate as a rookie in 2023, Skoronski improved to a 4.2% rate last season. He went from 30th in run blocking grade as a rookie to 7th last season. On top of that, this is from the Football Almanac over at FTN.com. Left guard Peter Skoronski has survived, this is what he said about him, has survived 2 seasons in the NFL and took a step forward as a run blocker last year, dropping his blown block count from 12 to 3. He's still a little inconsistent in pass protection and when climbing to the second level, but he looks at him as a guy that's an ascending player. Like I said, Brandon Thorne has him at 8th in his top 15 left guards. In fact, Brandon Thorne has 4 players at left guard, center, right guard, and right tackle, including J.C. Latham, that all rank inside the top 15 at their respective positions. Peter Skoronski's jump this year, what he is able to do or glean from offensive line masterminds and all that kind of stuff that he's been at, is such an important part to what not only this offensive line can be, but what this run game can be, what Cam Ward can be. And for a guy that likes to kind of scramble around a little bit and buy himself time, and he mainly kind of does that from inside the pocket, he really doesn't go sideline to sideline. The interior offensive line is going to be such a huge thing for this team. Of course, left tackle is always the most important, and we don't know what Dan Moore is going to be, and maybe Brandon Thorne at 220 can maybe alleviate some of my concerns about Dan Moore. But at this point, this idea to me that Peter Skoronski is A, a bust, or B, sucks, makes no sense to me. It really doesn't, because at this point, we have seen that sometimes it's an entire failing on the offensive line. A lot of the times, it's a failing on the quarterback.
He's put good ball on tape.
There is plenty of good film on tape for Peter Skoronski. And I even look at Peter Skoronski, everything that he's been able to do is all improvement. And if we can't recognize that someone is constantly improving, then what's the point of drafting and developing and then eventually retaining your players? Because right now, he's trending in the right direction. This isn't a Traylon Burks situation. Sorry for the drive-by shot there on Traylon Burks, but this isn't that kind of situation. This is a guy that's a first-round pick that maybe got overdrafted by a few spots, but he was the number 1 offensive lineman that draft, and he's ascending. It's a totally different situation, and we got to start being a little bit more realistic when we're having these discussions. All right, when we come back, we'll talk about a little bit about Cam Ward. We'll talk about the offensive system, and then, of course, we got Brandon Thorne of Trench Warfare Substack at 2:20 p.m. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone.
Man, look like I've been putting in a lot of work. Well, lifting 5 days a week is not really something I want to do. Dialing up my nutrition, yeah, maybe. All righty, well, so there's a little extra around the middle. And I don't have time to go to the gym every freaking day, but I'm still trying to do something, but nothing extreme. That's why I checked out M-Scope Neo at Edge Peptide Therapy. It tones muscle and melts fat, no needles, no downtime. M-Scope Neo is the most advanced body sculpting technology available, merging fat reduction with muscle building in one effortless session. No surgery, no downtime, just the results that speak for themselves. M-Sculpt Neo is your secret weapon, building muscle, burning fat faster than traditional workouts alone. It's like doing at least 500,000 sit-ups in 30 minutes. Yeah, man, I think Mr. Truth, R-Truth, could do that too as well, but he's burning a lot of sweat. But you can burn a lot of sweat with M-Sculpt Neo, Edge Peptide Therapy. And all you got to do is just give them a call. 615-724-1878. That's 724-1878.
Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone, powered by All Four Seasons Garage Door. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to get in. We're talking about the offensive line. We're going to talk a little bit about Cam Ward, but got Grand Poobah Jackson Williams behind the glass producing the show. Real quick, I want to go to the F&M Bank chat on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook Live. Hit a couple of these comments. Stoney Keeley says, this is the smartest conversation I've ever heard in my life about Peter Skoronski.
What about my tweet from earlier?
He said, that tweet was probably not the smartest thing he's ever read. Casey Jones said, I think it's clear as a fan base we have no idea what a first rounder that actually improves looks like.
Yeah, like the difference is Peter Skoronski's the first round pick the Titans have had that has shown development since Jeffrey Simmons.
Yes, for sure. So, yeah, since 2019. So, you just, look at it this way. I think Old Army Guy here on YouTube says it best. Bruce Matthews and Munch are first rounders and in the Hall of Fame. It took Bruce 5 years to make a Pro Bowl. Munch in his third. B-Hop was 13 overall and didn't make a Pro Bowl till year 6. Patience. And I think that's true. And maybe in today's NFL, there is no patience, and that's a larger indictment of where we're at. But that's,
McNair didn't start till year 3?
That's another good one.
And Bruce, I put Bruce Matthews in a tier of his own because he literally played all 5 positions.
Yeah.
And there is no, and I believe he started as a left tackle. Correct? Am I wrong?
I believe so. I'll have to double check that.
And then I know B-Hop was also a tackle. So it's more about the Mike Munchak comparison here, which I think the best case scenario
right guard year 1, according to Pro Football. He went from right guard, center right tackle, left tackle his first 4 seasons.
What do you play in college?
That I'm not actually sure on. So give me a second. You go ahead. But continue what you were saying.
But I think the absolute the most apt comparison is Mike Munchak because Mike Munchak was a guard for his career, which is also not fair to Peter Skoronski because Mike Munchak is a Hall of Fame guard.
Yeah, but what he is more saying is it takes time, right? Like Peter Skoronski could turn into a Hall of Fame guard.
It's not off the table.
Yeah, it says he was drafted as a guard according to Pro Football Reference, but it just says offensive line for his college stats.
Okay,
but I do agree with the overall premise of what Old Army Guy was saying on F&M Bank Chat, Twitch, or YouTube, Facebook Live, where you can see my beautiful face if you want to in a light blue shirt. But is that patience is kind of needed for offensive linemen. There's very, very few offensive linemen, I think, come in and then hit the ground running. Joe Alt was one of them right off the bat, and you knew Joe Alt was going to be that guy. You knew he was like a future Hall of Fame kind of guy. He had everything going for him. Now they put him at right tackle, and he adjusted very, very quickly, but he was a premier talent. Joe Alt was a better prospect than at left tackle in college than Peter Skoronski was. So to me, I do agree that I think that when you start looking at it, patience is needed. Does that mean that Peter Skoronski will be in the Hall of Fame? No. But I've always kind of said that I do think that Peter Skoronski, there is an all-pro guard hidden somewhere inside of him. It's just up for Bill Callahan and maybe whoever's the offensive line coach through the course of his career getting it out of him.
Yeah, I think I feel like so many players on this roster, including Cam Ward, you can look at and say, they need more time with this coaching staff than potentially what a lot of us believe they may get.
Yeah.
I feel like Skoronski, the best version of him, gets 3 to 4 years under Bill Callahan. Who knows if we'll actually get that. Cam Ward, I think, needs multiple years in the same system. I feel like the coaching staff hinders on the development of so many of these key players like Peter Skoronski, Cam Ward, all of these young Titans players that we are looking to see jumps from. I feel like we could see this year because of continuity.
I mean, I like Van Jefferson as a pro, but you need to see that jump from Elikiah Manor, right? You need to see it from Chig Okonkwo.
Yes, Chig is another big, you need to see a jump from him in continuity, because I don't believe Chig has had the same OC because Todd Downing was his rookie year. Then it was Kelly, or did I say that right?
Yeah, so it would have been
Tim Kelly, and then last year Nick Holes. This would have been the first year of.
This will be the first year of continuity. You're correct on that.
So I think it just hinders. So wait, he might have had 2 years at Downing.
No, because Downing was the year that AJ Brown got traded, right? Because Chig was in that draft class.
Yes, he was in the Traylon Burks draft class.
Yeah,
okay,
so,
yes.
yeah, you're
so the
correct.
last year of Downing, just continuity. The young players on this team have not had a lot of continuity, and I think the offensive line coach has changed every year under Peter Skoronski's tenure as well.
Yes,
this
will be his first time having continuity for sure.
So
this is actually the first year for a lot of players to have continuity outside of maybe those drafted in 2019.
I think patience with this coaching staff is needed, which is unfortunate because they only won 3 games last year and they could be no good. But I think we could see a jump from guys in year 2 of this system that we haven't seen in previous years from guys. Number 1, because the draft picks have been bad, and number 2, they actually have continuity in an offensive system.
Hey, listen, Casey Jones, when we're talking about Peter Skoronski, says, it really wouldn't even be bad if Pete had a Kevin Zeitler career and he only had, 1 Pro Bowl? And sure enough, Kevin Zeitler only has 1 Pro Bowl, but he's regarded as one of the best guards in the NFL still to this day at the age of 35. And he's entering in his 14th season.
Having a guy like that in the room is so huge for Peter Skoronski.
Right. I mean, he can basically tell him everything that he needs to do. To me, I look at it and I go, there's nothing really wrong with that. I mean, Kevin Zeitler was drafted in the first round and 27th overall. At some point when you're in year 15 or whatever, 15 or 14, whatever I just said, being drafted 20, if Peter Skoronski is in year 14 or 15 with the Tennessee Titans and he's been healthy that time, because Kevin Zeitler's one of his big things, been healthy, and only has 1 Pro Bowl, that's a pretty good 11th overall pick.
What year was Zeitler drafted?
2012, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Interesting.
So, to me, he was first round, 27th overall in the 2012 draft, which does not feel like it was that long ago. But if he even just turns out to be that guy, a guy that you can rely on to be in your lineup year in and year out and be a steadying force, then why is that not good for an 11th overall? Why does the 11th overall pick, not even in the top 10, have to be a Hall of Famer? Why does he have to be an All-Pro? If you get this out of him, that's really... I can tell you what, I bet Cincinnati wish they never let him go after the first 5 years. I bet they wish they would have kept him. Because then he went to Cleveland, then he went to the Giants, Baltimore, now and with Detroit, then Tennessee Titans. And I get it. He's not been elite, but he's still very good. Bet Cincinnati's wishing they had him.
Cincinnati won't pay anybody.
They
were never going to pay a guard.
No. They
won't pay their first-round pick.
This is why I don't think they'll ever fire Zach Taylor.
They'd have to pay him.
They'll have to pay him, and I think they would rather just let the contract expire. They seem to love, they would have loved Jeff Fisher the last 10 years.
They love mediocrity.
I mean, right? Because Marvin Lewis, it's maybe you can get to a Super Bowl again because you got Joe Burrow,
Not with Marvin Lewis.
But not with Marvin Lewis, but I'm talking Zach Taylor. Marvin Lewis, obviously you could, and they just never figured it out. So to me, I just kind of look at it and I go, I don't know. I bet Cincinnati's wishing they had Kevin Zeitler. I bet Cincinnati's wishing they had Peter Skoronski right now.
I bet they're wishing they had Shamar Stewart.
Yeah, that's true. That's for sure true. Let's go to Jason just real quick. Jason, you're on with Zach and the Grand Poobah himself.
Hey, guys. I was going to say 2 things right quick. I was going to say the only continuity that the guys have is T-Rack. But I see why. I see why the college, why the freshmen that come in, the draft picks come in, trying to get people that were on their team in college, because that's the only like continuity you have is somebody that you've already, been throwing the ball with. That's why they try to push. That's why Cam Moore pushed to get Restrepo. That way, you can talk to them. You already have that connection with them. So they're just like, go do your thing. Whenever things are kind of haywire, you put them out there, and they can go make something happen because they've already got the connection.
Hey, that's a pretty good point, Jason. That's another element of continuity that we haven't really talked about. So when we come back, I'm going to tell you some of the big differences between Cam Ward and Will Levis as draft prospects that actually matter to the Tennessee Titans. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone.
It is 2 o'clock. Good afternoon from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Jackson Williams. SEC Media Days continue today with Mississippi State, Florida, Oklahoma, and Alabama set to speak. 3HL will be interviewing Blake Shapen, Isaac Smith, and SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey. You can catch that right here on The Zone. In NFL news, the Jets made a pair of big-time moves yesterday, locking up wide receiver Garrett Wilson and cornerback Sauce Gardner to long-term deals. Wilson reached a 4-year, $130 million extension with the team, and Gardner agreed to a 4-year, $120 million deal, making him the highest-paid cornerback in the NFL. Nashville SC looks to bounce back tonight after a loss to Inter Miami over the weekend as they take on Columbus Crew at Geodis Park. Kickoff is set for 7:30 p.m., and you can catch that right here on The Zone starting at 7. For your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, you need to visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone, powered by all Four Seasons Garage Doors. 615-737-1045 is the number. We'll talk all things Titans offensive lineman. We'll go from left tackle to right tackle with Brandon Thorne of Trench Warfare Substack.com later in this hour. And Jackson, you know me. I am just a ray of positivity and sunshine, and I never like to bring up stats that may paint the team in a bad light, right? I mean, like you know that about me by now.
Oh, did you get that lobotomy you've been talking about?
Yeah, maybe. Well, it is a new year for me, so there you go. Let's start off with this.
He's 40, flirty, and thriving.
Yeah. Let's do this, Jackson. Let me tell you some stats. Over the last 3 years of Tennessee Titans offensive football, 46% of the Titans' third down passes resulting in them losing at least one expected point, the worst in the NFL. Not only that, during that same period, Jackson, on third downs, they either took a sack or threw an interception on nearly 20% of those dropbacks, also worse in the NFL. So the Tennessee Titans, obviously, we have watched the last 3 years. Neither of those stats should sound surprising, but this was the worst offense in the NFL on third down over the last 3 years. On top of that, last year in particular, according to the Football Almanac, they were the 10th best offense, Jackson, in the first quarter. They were the worst offense in the second through fourth quarter. Every quarter, they were the worst offense.
Except the first.
Except for the first. They were the 10th best.
They would have really nice starts to games, and then it just slowly unravel into madness.
Will Levis then remembers who he was, or Mason Rudolph remembers, or this offensive line. They all just remember who they were to begin with. Obviously, none of this should be surprising to anybody. But what you do need to know is that Cam Ward should help all those things. Listen, just think about what we know about Will Levis, is that he took too many sacks and threw too many interceptions. In college, Ward was the exact opposite. Ward was rarely sacked. He had a 2.9% sack rate, which was best in the quarterback class this 2025 season. Ward also posted an interception rate below 2% in all 3 seasons as a starter since going to Washington State. He threw 5.6 touchdowns. 5.6 touchdowns for every interception. 5.6 to 1 touchdown to interception ratio, which is in the 87th percentile. I get it.
What percentile was Will Levis in?
Well, we're going to get there because I get it. These are college stats. And everybody's like, well, you can't take college stats and maybe they don't mean anything. And Will Levis was playing in the NFL. Well, Will Levis's stats, just so you know, Levis took 42 sacks in his final 12-game season at Kentucky. 42 sacks, or 3.5 sacks per game, a sack rate of 12.9%. Remember, Ward was at 2.9%. 12.9%, 2.9%. For those that may not be good at math, that's a 10% difference. He also threw 10 interceptions on his 283 pass attempts, 3.5% interception rate in his final year at Kentucky, while Ward, who threw way more passes, was less than 2%. Huge difference there. Levis threw 1.9 touchdowns for every interception.
Almost 2-1.
Almost 2-1. Ward was 5.6 touchdowns for every interception.
What percentile is Levis in?
It doesn't say on this particular sheet, but I would say that would be pretty low. So even coming out the gate as a prospect, and clearly we all know that. This is all common sense, right? We all know that one guy was passed over by all 32 teams and ended up in the second round, while the other guy was drafted first overall and broke college records and all that kind of stuff. Like, we all know this. But you got to hear just how big of a gap that is. And maybe most fans already know it was a big gap, but it's even bigger than you think. It's even worse than you think. Like, the comparison isn't even close when it talks about reducing negative plays. He just runs laps around Levis. He also didn't just avoid negative plays. He created explosives. This one's for Stoney, because we're going to be talking about explosive plays on Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons with Stoney Keeley on Friday. He had the highest rate of completions over 20 yards in the class. Listen to this, Jackson. This is going to blow your mind, because this blew my mind. 51%, over 50%, obviously, 51%, over half of his passes, Cam Ward's passes, resulted in a first down or a touchdown.
Dog.
That gets you going, doesn't it?
Yeah, he's a dude.
That's the highest rate in the class. When he attacked downfield, and he was surgical and aggressive, because we know attacking downfield is supposed to be Levis's bread and butter, but he was not very good at it last year. His stats were boosted by the Atlanta Falcons game 2 seasons ago, and he was all right in college. When Cam Ward, though, attacked downfield, he was surgical and aggressive, posting a 75% on-target rate on throws over 10 yards, the best among all quarterbacks this year. So to me, even when he's not pressured, because we're talking about the offensive line, and we're going to be talking about Peter Skoronski and this entire offensive line's prospects with Brennan Thorne coming up in the next segment, you look at it and you go, even when Ward was not pressured, 49.9% of Ward's passes from a clean pocket went for a first down or a touchdown. That's, again, highest rate in the class. That's why this offensive line has been so important and has been almost totally reworked at 3 different spots, because they know what they got in that quarterback. Will he hit the highs of that he hit in college? Probably not. But when you're talking about what Cam Ward brings to the table as a prospect over what Will Levis was bringing to the table as a prospect, light years difference.
Which is why they went with a 30-pick difference.
Right. I mean, like, if you even look at, this was from the Football Almanac that I've been kind of referencing here and there. He talks about, it's not Carthon's fault that Will Levis didn't develop into a franchise quarterback. Like Malik Willis before him, the Titans were scooping up a player who fell in the draft and hoping there was something that everyone missed. And if you listened to Coach Mack yesterday, hope is not a strategy. Not even with your quarterbacks. It's just not a strategy.
Especially with your quarterbacks, hope shouldn't be a strategy.
Right. And especially because we all saw the tape of what he was. The tape is light years different. And I understand, because we have talked about it on this show. We've talked about football and other efforts. Kind of everybody's kind of talked about the turnover-worthy plays that Cam Ward has done and how Sometimes they look similar to what we've seen Will Levis do. The problem is that unlike Will Levis, he overcomes them. They don't phase him. Unlike Will Levis, he was able to create these explosive plays. And he was able to do that without having to rely on a lot of RPO usage, a lot of pre-snap motion, a lot of screen passes. He was able to do that by working the middle of the field, working the numbers and the sidelines. He was able to do that behind a suspect offensive line in Miami, but he was able to mitigate disaster on a regular basis, and that's the key difference. It's okay for us to say that that Cam Ward has similar plays on tape to the worst of Will Levis, but there are so many more examples of Cam Ward creating really good plays and stringing them together more so than what we have seen Will Levis be able to do at the NFL level and at the college level. What we saw from Will Levis was a worst-case scenario last year, but the Atlanta Falcons was definitely an outlier game.
Yeah, and I feel like once people saw the Falcons game, they thought it was the rule and anything else was the exception for a while.
Just totally throwing out what we know in college about the player.
Do you think if we went back and watched some 2023 tape, we would see some of the 2024 stuff there?
I would think so. I think he got pretty lucky when it comes to the turnovers and things not converting for the opposing team's defense. Because if you really look at the turnover-worthy plays between the two seasons, it's 4.4 versus 4.5%. 4.4 in 2024, 4.5% in 2023. His turnover-worthy play luck just decreased massively from 2023 to 2024. He became all those things went the defense's way, where in 2023, he got a little lucky. And that's just kind of where it's at. We're talking about a difference of 3 turnover-worthy plays, but a difference in 8 interceptions from 2023 to 2024. So to me, I look at it and I say, yeah, I think you would turn on the tape and maybe no like embarrassing memeable ones. No.
I bet they were still there.
Maybe. I don't remember them.
The Miami game, the pick 6.
Yeah, that would be pretty close.
Yeah.
But what I was saying is I don't know if that's, what I'm just saying is no passes between the legs and all that kind of stuff. But he did get lucky.
Well, that's because Mike Vrabel would have.
Yeah, probably murdered him.
That would not have ended well for Will Levis.
No. But at the end of the day, I think you are correct. There wasn't that big of a difference in what you saw in 2023 and 2024. It's just that in 2024, everything went against his way. Like all that luck, the lack of the defense turning over all of these worthy plays just went the other way. And you can't rely on luck, much like you can't rely on hope.
Luck and hope don't get you very far in the NFL. What do you think Vrabel's press conference after the Chicago game would have been like?
Oh, man. I to be honest, it would probably be the most talked about press conference maybe in history, because then you also have the punter getting hurt, right? Like it's not just Will Levis is bad in that game, but also the punter. You'll get some good sound bites, but I think by week 3, it would have been a totally different animal, because you got to remember
Mason Rudolph is the quarterback week 3.
Yeah, so you got to remember even after the Colts game. Remember the Colts game, he went 16 of 27 for 3.5 yards per attempt and just made sure to toss another interception for good measure and made 95 yards the whole time. That would have been I don't think we would have ever seen Will Levis after that.
I don't think we see him after the Jets in week 2 when he does it again.
Maybe not. That's probably a good point. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk with Brandon Thorne. We're going to go from the left tackle all the way to the right tackle for the Tennessee Titans and talk about what he's seen on film, how he's seen these players improve and how they can help Cam Ward. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons right here on 104.5 The Zone.
Did you know Eurofix has a very different business philosophy? They staff all the locations with more staff than any average auto repair shop, just so they can be ready when your emergency pops out of nowhere. So have you ever noticed how hard it is to get a right now appointment for a vehicle repair? Some dealers can be more than 2 weeks out just to get a freaking appointment, but not Eurofix. Eurofix has been offering quality repairs that beat their dealer without their dealer pricing since 1999. Plus a 3-year nationwide warranty and the staff to fix your car right now. So if you're tired of waiting forever to get your car into the shop, then call Eurofix. Owner Aaron Stokes says we will never be too busy for our customers. We're here to take their pain away, and we mean right now. And Eurofix repairs all European cars and say yes to speedy repairs when others can't or won't. Family owned for 26 years. And all you have to do is just give them a call at 844-EUROFIX. That's right. 844-EUROFIX, or you can visit them online at myEurofix.com. That's myEurofix.com. But always tell them Blaine said you.
Heard the Mark Patrick weight loss hypnosis hype? Well, I attended because my father stopped smoking. I lost 70 pounds and my friend lost 20 pounds in the first 2 months.
Wow, what are you waiting for? Join Mark Patrick seminars and lose the weight or stop smoking guaranteed for only $49.99.
Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons right here on 104.5 The Zone, powered by All Four Seasons Garage Doors, 615-737-1045. And we're going to go straight to the phones. Talk to, in my opinion, the premier offensive line analyst. He has a Substack called trenchwarfare.substack.com, and you should definitely go out there and subscribe and check out that. He is also the owner of that newsletter, offensive line, defensive line analyst for both Bleacher Report, Offensive Line Masterminds, and Established to Run, Brandon Thorne. You can follow him on Twitter at Brandon Thorne NFL. Brandon, how are you doing today?
Doing really good. Thank you for having me on.
No problem. Really appreciate you giving us the time. I kind of want to start off with this first, because we're going to talk about the Titans offensive line, but for the fan that cannot either get access to all 22, or for the fan that may not know really what they are watching on film, what are some stats, both for the run blocking and pass blocking, that you say probably paint the best picture, but not a complete picture of what good offensive line play looks like?
I mean, I'm a little hesitant to quote many stats. Honestly, I think for offensive line play in particular, you have to really watch the film of as much different, situations and teams as you can to kind of have something to go off of and then compare from there. I look at traits when I scout specifically. It's, a series of 10 kind of traits per position. But, I mean, if I had to pick just real generally speaking, I would just say, you could look at counting stats, like rushing yards, for run game, run blocking. If you want to go more granular, EPA per run, rushing success rate, things like that, just to kind of get you in the ballpark of what teams are having success on the ground generally. And then you could probably, get to the point where you can assume that the line is playing pretty well. And then pass protection wise, you could look at, just, I guess, pressures given up, even though pressures are pretty subjective in themselves, but that could kind of get you in the ballpark. But that's for units more than anything. I'm really not a big fan of many stats for individual player evaluation, but unit wise, those are some that I would throw out there.
Okay, so you over at trenchwarfare.substack.com, you put out your top 75 offensive linemen. You rank the NFL's 15 best offensive linemen at each position. The Tennessee Titans have 4 players ranked in the top 15 at 4 of the positions. So I'm going to go from left to right. Left tackle, obviously, Dan Moore was unranked. But talk about Dan Moore. He got paid $82 million by the Tennessee Titans. He had 4 years over at the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they've tried replacing him in numerous ways, and he just fought off every competition that came his way. But where do you put Dan Moore in the conversation at his position as far as, pass blocking? Because that's really the biggest concern for the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably say, average to below average. And I mean, the important context there is left tackle is the deepest position in the NFL in terms of offensive line play. So, yeah, of the 5 positions, it has the most talent. Dan Moore, I think, is probably in that, based on how I tier things, that 4th tier, which is solid. Like where I have somebody like even like Taylor Decker there who, has at times been above average to good, I think, throughout his career. A little bit of a down year last year in some respects, pass protection specifically, in my opinion. He's kind of on the fringe there, like the top of that tier. But, below that, like a guy like Charles Cross, who's been a little bit up and down with Seattle, definitely has the talent of somebody better. So somewhere like in that, 15 to 20 range, 16 to 20, I think is a fair spot for Dan Moore. But, with the context of left tackle being pretty loaded, that's certainly a guy that you would, for the most part, like to have on your team. You definitely got to pay a premium when that guy like that hits the market, just because tackle in general is the hardest position to fill, especially when you factor in right tackle being nowhere near as talented as left top to bottom. But yeah, I like Dan Moore. I mean, the fact that he had missed 2 games in his first 4 years, he's available, he's reliable from that perspective. I think part of the perspective on him gets skewed a little bit because of the division that he's coming from, having to face Miles Garrett, TJ Watt, not really TJ Watt, excuse me, in practice, him and Highsmith, but Miles Garrett, Trey Hendrickson, in particular, having to face them, 4 total times a year. That's going to kind of make any tackle not look as good as maybe he really is. Those are 2 of the 5 or 6 best edge rushers in the league. So that kind of skews things a little bit in his defense. But yeah, I liked the signing as well, just because I felt like it improved 2 positions, with moving Latham to the right tackle slot, his natural home. So that's how I feel about him relative to the other 32 left tackles. And then just in terms of him for this offensive line, I think it made a lot of sense.
Moving over to left guard, we just spent probably almost the whole first hour of the show talking about how much Peter Skoronski has improved. And in your ranking system, you have him as the 8th best left guard, which is really good. I know he was just outside of the top 10 in ESPN's poll. I know that Warren Sharp and the Football Almanac, all these guys are really, talking about the development that he has shown probably at the halfway point of the season, is really earlier than that. But you talked about some things with Skoronski. Talk about what you saw from him last year and maybe some stuff that he added to his arsenal on film.
Yeah, for me, the jumping off point for him to kind of go to the next level was that Week 8 game against the Lions, specifically when he was matched up against Levi Onwuzurike and Lee McNeil, who were causing a lot of issues last year for interior offensive lines. And that point forward, I think he went to the next level. And then specifically, like with him on film, I just thought he was using his hands better. I liked his approach better in pass protection in terms of being more aggressive, kind of setting the terms, dictating the terms to pass rushers a little bit more. And I think he had strong hands, good body control, good athletic ability, going back to college. It's just making that transition inside. Obviously, first year he had the emergency appendectomy, I want to say, lost a bunch of weight. It was kind of up and down, and then last year he was able to settle in, play, consistently. And I think that was the big thing, really, is just getting snaps. Which just helps with making the adjustment to a different position. And I think, he kind of turned the corner last year. And to me, he's for sure a top 10 left guard. You mentioned he came in 8th for me. I'm baking into the projection, his age, being younger, relatively new to the position, also taking into account his pedigree as a prospect and what he showed there. He works closely with offensive line masterminds at Duke Manyweather as well, so I'm pretty familiar with, his work ethic and things like that. That doesn't hurt either. I just think there's a lot here that's pointing to an ascending player. It was kind of what we expected for him as a prospect as well. It's just, I always like to say development is never or rarely linear. It's rarely, you just get better each season. Things happen, stuff comes up. And that's why I always like to say, be patient with guys, especially if they're switching positions like he did. And I thought you saw some of the fruit of that last year.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he had a great, back of the season. Really, after the coming out of the bye week, he seemed to really turn a corner. Lloyd Cushenberry is a little bit of another story. Fans and some media in this area would say that, prior to his injury, he wasn't really playing that good. I know you have him as the 12th best center on the trench warfare. You expect that he should maybe get some of that movement skills back and all that kind of stuff, but you don't really know how much he can get back from coming off an Achilles injury. But you did put, prior to the injury last season, he was playing his usual good, well-rounded football. Talk about what you saw in those first games before the injury and why Titans fans should maybe have a little bit more hope and maybe need to kind of view his 2024 differently.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know by what, measurements people were getting that idea from Cushenberry on PFF, something like that. But, just me watching film of guys. I saw kind of the same stuff from Cushenberry that we saw since he turned the corner. I want to say he turned the corner his last or second to last year in Denver, I want to say, is when things kind of switched for him. But yeah, I mean, Cushenberry, to me, I think his game is predicated off of burst, quickness, out of his stance. I think both of those are in an above average level, and that's kind of what allows him to get to spots, get into good fits in the run game, cut off linebackers and things at the second level off combos. I think he's an asset in the run game overall. Pass protection has always been a little bit lagging behind run blocking. I think going back to LSU, but specifically in Denver, and even a little bit last year. And I think, he's not like the most stout, sturdy presence, but definitely good enough, really good length. And when his hands are dialed in and he has good timing and placement, he could kind of mitigate some of those concerns. But I definitely think the run game is what he is going to bring at the higher level of the two. And because of the Achilles injury, that calls into question how much juice is he actually going to have, especially early on. Sometimes that's an injury that takes 2 years to recover from, even if he plays this year, for the bulk of the game. So, that's why he came in at 12 for me. I was, if you want to go, closer to 15, I think that's probably fair for him. But I think right around that 12, 13 range, there's some unprovenness, league wide, relatively speaking, that makes it like, based on his track record, that's kind of where I landed, and it made sense to me. I think that was a relatively conservative estimate, being top 12 to 15. But yeah, I mean, I think it all pretty much hinges on, how much burst and acceleration and everything he has in his lower half from that Achilles.
One of my favorite signings of this offseason for the Tennessee Titans comes at right guard with Kevin Zeitler. He's entering in his 14th year in the NFL, and he only kind of has one Pro Bowl, which doesn't really is kind of insane. But like, you have him as the 7th best guard, even entering in a year where he's going to be, 35 years old. And talk about why he's been able to be such a mainstay, and what can he bring maybe to Peter Skoronski's game, being that he's a veteran that's kind of gone through all shapes of, the offensive line and the ups and downs of an NFL career.
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you get a guy like that with that level of experience at that level that he's played at, which is, I think, an above average level, pretty much his whole career. Every year I've been doing these rankings since 2021. He's been in the same tier, that above average range, and nothing's really changed. But yeah, anytime you get a guy like that in the building, especially for Skoronski, I mean, he's a guy that you follow, you pick his brain. You get tips from, not even just on the field, but off the field as well. Preparation, how do you take care of your body, things like that. So yeah, just a wealth of knowledge. There's not a lot of 33, 34 plus year old players in the NFL period, let alone on the offensive line. So anytime you have a guy like that sticking around, there's usually a really good reason for it. And I think it's pretty evident with Zeitler what that is. And in terms of on the field, yeah, just, he's what you would expect. He's crafty. He's technically sound. He plays, in good positions, doesn't get in a lot of compromising positions. As you would expect, his movement skills aren't great, but he mitigates that with really sound technique, and he's strong still as well. But, yeah, he's one of those guys that, probably, he expectedly, to me, doesn't really make Pro Bowls because there's some superstars out there. But he's just one of those guys who's steady. You don't hear a lot about, and usually for an offensive lineman, that's a very good thing. So, yeah, I just think he completes the offensive line, in a lot of respects, signing him, even if it is for a year or two.
We come down to a right tackle who played left tackle last year, J.C. Latham, the Tennessee Titans' first-round pick of 2024. Everything that you saw on tape, the size, the power, the strength, all that stuff showed up. We've heard from Brian Callahan and even J.C. Latham himself talking about how weight may have came into a factor later on in the season. but now he's switching to his more natural position at right tackle. Talk about why it's such a right tackle, such a natural fit for J.C. Latham, and what you're really expecting from him in his second year with Bill Callahan.
Yeah, so saw him at Offensive Line Masterminds. He looked great, just in terms of his body and everything. So that's always good to see. He had 25 starts in college, all on the right side, so that's why it's natural for him. Kind of plain and simple there. He's never played left. I know he kind of flirted with it his last year at Alabama, maybe practiced over there a little bit. Had him on a film room, and I think he told me that, but it just never came to fruition. So he's never played it, So that's really why right side is natural. I would expect him to be more comfortable over there, especially now, just with the construction of the offensive line being better, having a guy like Zeitler next to you. That's another guy who's going to benefit from Zeitler, I think. And then as well, that's going to make all these guys better, I think, is just the quarterback play, assuming it's even just decent or solid. I know, fans are expecting hopefully more than that, but if you're just getting that, that's going to make life a lot easier for the offensive line, specifically in pass protection, when you could kind of bank on what the guy's doing back there and doing what he's supposed to do, that sort of thing. Making plays with his feet, all that. So that's going to help, I think, Latham in particular. But, even so, with some struggles in pass protection on the left side, which I think largely understandably so with the new position. Like you saw the size, power, play strength, demeanor translate in a lot of different ways, pass and run game. So that's comforting, I think, just, knowing that is for real. I'm encouraged, by what he could be in year two, first year back at right tackle, second year under Bill Callahan. There's a lot of things to be encouraged by. So we'll see. But yeah, I'm pretty hopeful that he's going to be, a solid player this year, if not more.
Well, Brandon, before you go, talk about trench warfare, what you do, and where people can go to subscribe.
Yeah, so trenchwarfare.substack.com is my newsletter. I study offensive and defensive line play for a living, so year round, that's what I do every day. And I've been doing it for almost 10 years now, and it's kind of a dream job for me. So, yeah, I take it seriously. I have a lot of respect for the players and the coaches, and I just, pretty much predicate all my opinions off of studying film. So, yeah, consistently just trying to do that and do it better each year. And yeah, appreciate you guys having me on.
No problem. We appreciate you, Brandon. Of course, Brandon Thorne. You can follow him on Twitter at Brandon Thorne NFL. He's the offensive line, defensive line analyst for Bleacher Report, O-Line Masterminds, and Established to Run. You should go subscribe to trenchwarfare.substack.com. I do. That's how I know a little bit more about offensive line play than I did yesterday, than I did last year, because I'm constantly learning from Brandon Thorne. When we come back, we'll talk more about the Tennessee Titans offensive line and that relationship between the quarterback. This is Covered 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone. Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone, powered by All Four Seasons Garage Doors. 615-737-1045 is the number. If you missed it, we had offensive line and the premier offensive line analyst, in my opinion, Brandon Thorne, talking about the Tennessee Titans offensive line. And I have to say, we should have high expectations for this team. Now, do I mean a top 10 offensive line? No. But if this offensive line is somehow not a top 15 unit, then something went horribly wrong. Because everything we have seen about, Zeitler and Skoronski being some of the top interior offensive linemen. We have seen Lloyd Cushenberry play good, not great, but maybe good football. And you heard Brandon Thorne. He said that the people who don't think he was playing good football, they don't know jack. And then you look at what J.C. Latham put on tape last year, what he put on tape in college, and how he looks right now. If you don't have high hopes for this offensive line, and maybe you don't want to have high hopes, maybe you want to be pleasantly surprised, but we need to hold them to a certain expectation. And I'm beginning to go, not top 20, top 15 should be the expectation. Jackson, you heard the grand poobah behind the glass. You heard what he had to say. Do you think a top 15 expectation, even if it's number 15, is too high for this Tennessee Titans offensive line right now?
No, because of the money invested.
I agree. If Dan Moore is the worst left tackle, or rewinding. If Dan Moore is the worst offensive lineman on this team, but he's still an average NFL left tackle, somewhere in the top 20, not horrible, that probably is still worth the investment. It's almost like drafting Peter Skoronski at 11 overall, but he's just a one-time Pro Bowler. At this point, with the money and draft capital spent, we got to hold this offensive line to a high standard and a high expectations. We got to, Bill Callahan as the coach, we can't just say, well, there's some newness. It takes time to gel. We put J.C. Latham over at the right, and we got Dan Moore, and he wasn't all that anyway. No. This expectation should be, and I am sure inside the building, the Tennessee Titans have the same expectation. This expectation should be that this is a top 15 unit. I have a sounds giveaway. Okay, caller number 7 win 2 tickets to what?
You get to see the Sounds host Charlotte next Wednesday at First Horizon Park. First 1,000 fans will receive a Sounds Clear tote bag presented by Vanderbilt Health.
There you go, 615-737-1045 to see the Nashville Sounds versus the Charlotte Knights next week. 2 tickets right there. 615-737-1045 is the number to win those fabulous tickets. All right. But to me, I look at it and I go, you have to expect higher and better. Because I was kind of like on the fence saying, okay, well, maybe it's the 20th best. That's still better than 32 or 30 or 31. That's fine. But you need to be top 15. And you need to be top 15 in year 1, and you probably need to be top 15 in the first 4 weeks. Because this defensive lines that you're going to see, you can't handle the defensive lines being with these defensive lines, you can't handle the offensive line being like it was last week, or you're going to have a bad start to Cam Ward's career. Does not mean it's going to be perfect, but a top 15 offensive line performance isn't perfect. But you need that for Cam Ward. And I think when you look at it, maybe, and I know that Brandon Thorne said that, hey, I stick to the tape, right? I watch the tape, I watch the film. Stats are stats. Have fun with them. And I have been very anti Dan Moore from a stats and film perspective. But I have found a stat that actually paints Dan Moore's pass blocking ability in a much better light than what maybe some of the other stats or the film says. And I'm not saying the film is downright terrible. I understand how the market works. It's just like Dan Moore's just getting paid a lot to be maybe 20th best, maybe 16th best. But in ESPN's pass block win rate, he was 11th amongst left tackles, the 11th best left tackle in ESPN's pass block win rate. Now, of course, that's just holding up for 2.5 seconds. If you held up your pass rusher for 2.5 seconds, that's a win. That's a win for you. Now, if something happens after the fact, it doesn't matter. You made it to 2.5 seconds. So if after 3 seconds, a sack happens, doesn't matter. You held up for 2.5 seconds. So at the end of the day, it's going to be about Cam Ward and his ability, his scrambling ability, his pocket movement ability, his ability to get the ball out quick, because he did not do that in college at a very high rate. So he's got to get the ball out quicker. He's got to be able to buy some time for his receivers to get open, maybe. But I do think that with a better quarterback, a more comfortable play caller, a more comfortable offensive line, to me, I look at it and I go, okay, this should be better. If Dan Moore, like I have talked about, is your worst player on the offensive line, that's likely going to be a good thing because everybody was 20th or better. And that's fine. He just can't be an abject disaster at left tackle. If you're average or above average at all the positions, you're looking better. But Dan Moore's tape does not show that. It maybe shows average here and there. I mean, I would be willing to say average to below average, and that's what Brendan Thorne said at first, but he moved it up to just average by the end of the conversation. But expecting $82 million worth of play is not a real expectation. So at this point, you might as well just not worry about that $82 million. It's been spent. Don't worry about it. Just hope that he's not an abject disaster. Just hope that maybe if he's the 11th best at ESPN pass block win rate, maybe that translates. Maybe Bill Callahan can get more and improve more out of Dan Moore than the Steelers' offensive line coach could, than that offensive system. That's a possibility too. Maybe Bill Callahan is the missing ingredient. But at the end of the day, we have to see it to believe it. I will say that to me, I'm looking at it, if he's the 20th best left tackle, that's probably better than what you have seen over the last 3 years, and that includes J.C. Latham. All right. I got Ron Slay wishing me like 3 happy birthday messages in the chat, so I guess 3HL must be next, right? 3HL's up next. They got SEC Media Days. They got Greg Sankey at 3 o'clock. Benjamin Watson at 3:45. Chris Doring, 4:20. Alyssa Lang, 4:45. Brennan Thompson, 5 o'clock. And Blake Shapen and Isaac Smith at 5:20. Loaded show by the best coverage over at SEC Media Days with 3HL. This has been Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone. Got the Grand Poobah and the King producer, Joseph. Thank you for joining the first time. I got the Grand Poobah, Jackson Williams, producing a fantastic show. Grade the show real quick.
A show, bud.
There we go. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 105 The Zone. And in the meantime,
happy birthday in between time.
Peace.